All right, well, welcome to the 24th Annual REIT Symposium, Consolidation and Growth in Turbulent Times. On behalf of the faculty, students, conference hosts, Adam Emmerich and Robin PANOVKA, and my co-host, Scott Robinson, it is my privilege as Dean of the Schack Institute to welcome you to today's event. Consolidation and Growth in Turbulent Times is an apt theme for today's conference. And I think what we're going to hear over the course of today's panels is that the sources of that consolidation, the sources of those opportunities for growth, are varied. They include changes in the financial markets, the way that our sector is perceived, the investment opportunities that are presented to us as investors in real estate, and certainly, and perhaps foremost at this particular point, the impact of technology and how it is transforming fundamentally the way that we use space and make investment decisions. As far as consolidation and growth in turbulent times is concerned, today's conference also takes place against the specter of a possibility of a cusp or an inflection in the business cycle. We are just 2 months away from this being the longest expansion in modern economic history in the United States. The longest expansion we ever had was 10 years, 120 months. In June of 2019, we will reach that anniversary once again. It used to be the case that in speaking with investors and lenders in particular, I would describe how as a risk-averse person, I would not be able to, in my baseline expectation or my baseline risk models, simply assume that this expansion would go longer than anything has in modern economic history. At this point in the cycle, unless we believe that inflection is right around the corner, we will be going longer than we have ever gone. Now, for many reasons, there are many reasons to believe that we will go much longer than we ever have before. That being said, the question isn't so much for us today when exactly that inflection will occur. For those of us who are making investment decisions with an investment or lending time horizon of 3 or 5 or 7 or 10 years or perhaps even longer, the question in addressing this short-term issue of downturn is more likely to be the fact that whatever investment or exposure we are taking on today, we will hold that exposure on our balance sheets during some period of time where the economy will not be performing in a way that is supportive of our real estate assets. That is a relatively short-term issue and one that we can think about acting and positioning ourselves defensively today to begin to address very effectively so that we come out of things very, very well positioned on the other side. And I firmly believe that in looking at previous cycles, it is those investors and lenders that do anticipate the possibility, the likelihood, the reality of that cusp in the business cycle that are going to be the ones that are going to be able to capitalize on constraints in the availability of equity, of debt, and be able to make the most of that opportunity to be able to come out stronger on the other side when we do return to expansion. Overall, this has been an exceptional cycle for real estate investment. And as economists, when we look at the way in which our sector is exposed, the levels of debt, the way that the sector is changing, certainly extraordinary differences that we have to acknowledge across the different property types, across different metropolitan areas in terms of the way we use space, in terms of the degree of liquidity, in terms of who the investor market participants are, in terms of the way that we think about real estate and some of our traditional notions of what constitutes core real estate, being different today. And I think we're going to see that with our keynote speaker and with other aspects of the conversation, that real estate has a much broader and more inclusive definition than has been the case historically. While we're well positioned and certainly are unlikely to be the proximate cause for that next downturn, there is always some proximate cause, we will feel our measure of pain when that downturn does come. Again, sort of a reason for us to think about how it is at this point. We don't know when the economy will turn. We do know that it will return to growth in relatively short order after any downturn. But being able to anticipate the possibility or the likelihood of that and position ourselves accordingly becomes an important short-term feature of how we think about the market over the near future. With that in mind, I'm going to take just a moment to tell you about some of the exceptional things that we've done at the Schack Institute over the last year and some of the things that we have to look forward to. Perhaps most important, we're introducing a whole set of really timely and important new academic programs. For much of our history, we've been focused on finance, on asset management, on construction, on development, and those remain the core foundations of all of our academic programming, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level. But as the largest real estate program in the world, founded by Larry Silverstein in 1967, and now grown to over 700 students in both full and part-time programs, we have the opportunity and the scale to offer a tremendous variety of programming that is immediately relevant to our students when preparing them for the industry and the way that it is changing. Our newest programs that we begin to roll out this fall include concentrations in real estate technology, prop tech, data sciences, and even a coding course, with the firm belief that our students, to be relevant and being able to leverage the data that organizations have access to, not just for research purposes, but fundamentally to apply that data to make better decisions, need to be able to know how to code irrespective of what their particular role is within their organization. Outside of the formal academic content, we continue to work very, very hard to make sure that every student that is capable, that is hardworking, that has potential, has the opportunity to participate in our program. And I want to thank our sponsors today, Fried Frank, American Tower, RXR, Monmouth, Ackman Ziff, and Ferguson Partners. Their contributions, each and every one of those dollars, goes to support merit and need-based financial aid programs that opens the doors to a Schack education to a wide range of students, irrespective of their financial circumstances. Amongst our other co-curricular and extracurricular programs, this is the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, something that's very important for NYU, being just a couple of blocks away from the site of the original riots 50 years ago. We're all about starting new traditions and showing that we continue to innovate. And so alongside our 24th annual REIT Symposium, our 52nd annual Capital Markets Conference in the fall, our 3rd National Symposium of Women in Real Estate, which has now, in just 3 years, grown to the largest event of its kind in the real estate industry, we're delighted to introduce our first National Pride Roundtable. And that's for LGBTQ students and members of the profession to come together in an environment where they can have a conversation about all of the challenges and issues that still face some of our students. How can I be out when I am looking for work? Can I be authentic? Are firms going to hire me based purely on merit and what I am capable of, or are they going to potentially evaluate me and hire me based on some other criteria? And our message to folks in industry is to absolutely communicate to students, to young professionals within your organization, that advancement within your organization, the possibility of seizing upon opportunity, is based purely on merit. And if you work hard and you do well and you're a contributing member of the organization, then it doesn't matter where you look like or where you come from or who you love, you have a place in our organization. Now, realizing that we have the scale to offer this kind of program, if there are students that you know of in other academic programs, if there are members of your companies that would benefit from participating in this kind of forum, please refer them to us. We would love to host them as our guests at the Pride Roundtable, which is just about a month away. I mentioned the Women's Symposium. We are going on our 3rd year. It is an absolutely extraordinary event. The one thing I would suggest, about 95% of the attendees at the Women's Symposium were women. And it's important for our students, whether it's in today's program, whether it's at the Women's Symposium, to see that not only are other women leaders in the industry behind them, but that all of us are behind them. And so I would ask the men in the audience, please join us for the Women's Symposium. I think you're going to find that it is an extraordinary lineup of incredible folks that gives just some truly extraordinary insights into the future of our industry, whether it relates to construction, the property types, the outlook for capital raising, prop tech, entrepreneurship. It is all on the table at that event. We do have a very special session that will be our closing program at the end of today's agenda, and you can see in the books that you have in front of you, in speaking with Bill Ferguson and Gemma and other folks at Ferguson Partners about how 49 women were appointed to REIT boards in 2018. That's the largest number in history, and that's an important accomplishment. We wanted to find a way to really leverage that to inform some of our conversation. And so with the support of Ferguson Partners, with NAREIT, Bonnie Gottlieb, Senior Vice President of NAREIT, is here with us as well today. Our final session of the day in the Regency Room includes 6 women board members who are going to be talking about what's happening in the boardroom generally and how the boardroom is driving decision-making in the C-suite. So again, that is a session that I would encourage everyone to please take the time, set it aside in your day, and join us for that later on today. It's going to be a particularly important program. I have to say that it is a near perfect agenda. The one thing that we are missing is that we are not where we need to be and where I've committed to our students we would be in terms of diversity and inclusion on this agenda, and you're going to see that. And I would ask for the support of the entire industry. Our chairs have worked tirelessly to advance the agenda, to ensure that our students have the opportunity to see role models, and I would ask that the entire industry think about ways in which we can improve the visibility of women and underrepresented minorities in our industry, because every one of our students deserves the opportunity to see someone who can serve as a mentor for them and as a role model for them when they attend a conference that's as important as this one. It is a fantastic lineup. Our registrations are up 30% over last year. Over the course of today, we will have more than 550 people attending the conference, and as you can see from everything that's listed in your books, we really have an exceptional day ahead of us. With that, I will turn it over to our conference co-chair, Robin PANOVKA, and again, thank you. Looking forward to spending the day with you.
Wow, thanks, Sam. I got to tell you, all of the changes you're bringing about are fantastic, and we applaud them, and Adam and I are just delighted to be along for the ride. I also want to thank the incredible NYU team that put this all together and made this possible. We have a spectacular day ahead of us, and really want to welcome all of you back for incredibly the 24th annual symposium. Among you, as Sam mentioned, are a whole bunch of students. Please take a moment when you get a chance to just say hi and chat for a little bit. A few words of wisdom at this stage of their careers means an awful lot. So as is traditional for us at these conferences, Adam and I usually throw out our top 10 predictions for what we expect to see in the next year, and hopefully that sets the stage for some conversations to be had as the day progresses. So prediction number one relates to the growth of tech REITs, as we call them. There's been just an extraordinary growth. 4 out of the top 10 REITs today are tech REITs, driven by technology, including American Tower, the REIT run by our keynote speaker today, Jim TAICLET, so we'll hear a lot about that. We expect tremendous more growth by REITs or in REITs that are driven by tech one way or the other. They might be traditional REITs or new types of REITs, but REITs that have harnessed technology. So that's one. Prediction number two, there's been a lot of talk over the last year about NAV discounts, and that's been a major driver of a lot of activism and a lot of deal activity. We see those NAV discounts flipping as stock prices rise and other things happen to premiums in many sectors, which should have a pretty significant impact on transaction activity and slow down some of the activism that has been based on the NAV discounts. Prediction 3, take privates will get harder given the rising stock valuations, but will continue in certain sectors. So no question the pricing has gotten more difficult, but the amount of dry powder in the hands of the private equity firms has also been growing dramatically and will need to find a home. So we see more take privates. Prediction 4, restored CEO confidence, in part because of the valuations rising, will drive a fair amount of public-to-public transactions and more consolidations into REITs. A number of transactions we've seen dormant over the last few years are starting to wake up, and we expect a few of those in the next 12 to 24 months. Prediction 5, more founders to look for exits or succession. Many of the folks who started the REITs out there are getting to the point where they're ready to move on. They're either going to have successors in place or look for other types of exits, which could be transactional. And we see a fair amount of that happening and driving transactions. Prediction 6, the PE giant domination, really just two major PE firms out there, unfortunately for the market, looks like it's going to continue. When you're selling a major REIT these days, anything sizable, two bidders tend to show up who can actually do it if it's a take private, and that is likely to continue, which, and this is a little bit of M&A plumbing, we think will lead to a lot more go shops and window shops in the way deals are structured, so that transactions are set up in a way that, as Sam Zell has called it, are effectively an auction with a floor. You have one bidder out there, which is a reflection of the shallow bidder pool that we see. Number 8, given the rising valuations and the positive outlook, we see the REIT market continuing to grow, not just in the tech REIT area, but generally. We're already at a 1.1 trillion equity market cap. We expect about a 10% growth per annum, so 1.3 by the end of 48 months is fairly likely. Number 9, a lot of talk about Chinese capital evaporating. We don't see it coming back. We've seen massive evaporations in transactions we've been involved in. But the good news is, despite all of the talk, it really wasn't that significant and doesn't seem to be affecting the markets in any meaningful way. And number 10, and this is a good segue into our keynote speech today, tech disruption is just getting started. We've seen a fair amount of disruption already, particularly in retail and areas like that. Our sense is, and I think Jim is going to scare everybody into believing this far more than I could, we're just getting started. The disruption is massive and going to continue. So with that, let me introduce our keynote speaker, Jim TAICLET. Jim is the chairman, president, and CEO of American Tower, the largest REIT in the world, with an equity market cap of $85 billion and over 170,000 sites around the world. There is real estate at the end of the chain somewhere there, and 170,000 towers and other facilities drive this incredible business you're going to hear about. Jim's distinguished career has straddled real estate and non-real estate businesses and other ventures, including previously serving as president of Honeywell Aerospace, serving as a United States Air Force officer and pilot during the Gulf War, the executive board of REIT, and Lockheed Martin's board of directors, just to name a few. Jim was named one of the 7 CEOs in Forbes Global 2000 Hall of Fame, and in 2018, the Harvard Business Review included Jim on its list of the 100 best performing CEOs in the world for the 7th consecutive year. It's hard to think of anyone more qualified to keynote this event, and particularly to explain to all of us the intersection of REITs, real estate, and technology, the so-called REITech revolution, which has been keeping all of us on our toes. So we're thrilled to welcome Jim. Please join me in welcoming him up to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Robin, for the introduction. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Sam, Scott, the Symposium co-chairs, Adam and Robin, who do a fantastic job every year, and everyone who's been involved in making this symposium a success for the last 24 years running. It's amazing to see how the REIT industry's grown, over $1 trillion of value from an idea. The returns the industry's generated over this period of time for investors, and the contributions that all of you that run REITs are making to our economy. So thank all of you guys for your efforts in highlighting and promoting this important industry. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to highlight some of the tremendous potential that specifically among technologies 5G has to transform not just the real estate business, but many aspects of our lives in the coming years. When I started at American Tower in 2001, we were a small, primarily US-based cell phone tower operator. We've grown some since then. We're a REIT now, as you heard, with a portfolio of about 170,000 properties in 17 countries on 5 continents around the world. Our physical assets that are really there, as Robin said, include the traditional macro cell towers that you see along the highway and the distributed antenna systems that you use, whether you know it or not, when you make or receive a call in a mall, office building, resort, or casino. These comprise the backbone of today's modern wireless networks, and we are a foundation in many countries around the world, as you can see, for those networks. And we think these assets are going to even have a more important and larger role as time goes by, because we advance towards the next generation of wireless, something you read about and hear about all the time, called 5G. So what is 5G? It's basically a series of advancements in the way that wireless signals can be delivered to a wide variety of devices. In practical terms, this will result in higher speeds, more data volume, and far more connected devices that all of us can take advantage of in our lives. So if you kind of look at the chart, 1G, or first generation technology, cellular analog technology, started in the 80s. You might remember the bag phone, Wall Street, and the brick phone that they were using in that movie. 2G gave improved voice, ability to do text and voicemail on your cell phone. 3G gave you mobile web browsing, allows us to do transactions on the phone, and other basic functions, sending emails, etc. And then 4G, which we're all using today in this room, gives you everything, including mobile video. This is another breakthrough that came with 4G is the ability to do well-executed mapping services, such as ride-hailing, etc. So 4G is where we're at today, and 5G is where we're going. Looking at the next slide, it's also important to understand that the deployment of 5G is going to take a better part of a decade to do, in much the same way as the deployment of 3 and 4G have done in the past. It takes time for handset makers to manufacture devices, for consumers to turn in and then trade up to those devices, and for a wide range of industries, including entertainment, social media, automotive, and many others, to adapt the new technology for their own products and services. Consequently, in our view, we continue to think that 4G will comprise a majority of connections in the United States for at least the next 5 years, if not longer. And what you can see on this chart is the 24-year life cycle of 2G. It was introduced in the very early 2000s. People were using 2G phones up to the last couple of years when they were finally turned off by the major cell phone operators in the US. 3G having a similar life cycle beyond that. And 4G, we think, will run into, again, the mid-2020s before it begins to get displaced by 5G. Now, that doesn't change the fact that 5G is needed as soon as possible to help networks manage the massive data growth in our society. All of us are consuming more content on our phones, tablets, smartwatches, and other devices. Mobile data consumption's exploded, and it's expected to continue to grow rapidly. In fact, by 2028, as you can see on this chart, use is expected to be 6 times last year's levels, 6 times in 10 years. And that's just on the mobility side, the cellular side of the equation. Data carried over Wi-Fi and other fixed locations is exponentially growing faster and also needs more network investment and deployment to manage the indoor and fixed activities that we do. Now, 5G is expected to impact all of our experiences in 5 broad categories. The first one is through what's called lower latency, or signal delay transmission, which can enable things like cloud gaming, as well as components of autonomous driving networks a bit further down the road. 5G will also lead to much faster network speeds to each device, and that'll accelerate content delivery and allow more immersive user experiences. And then additionally, the 5G standard provides for a tremendous increase in the number of simultaneous device connections that can happen, which we think is likely to open up some really interesting opportunities in the Internet of Things, or IoT world. Finally, 5G will provide far more capacity, which will increase the amount of content and information networks can carry. Furthermore, the technology promises to reduce the energy required for our devices due to more efficient power consumption and longer battery life. And one of the biggest physical limitations on what your device can do today is battery drain and rate. So all of these technology improvements are clustered together in what we shorthand call 5G. So here's a few examples of the numerous advanced products and services that 5G can enhance and transform for all of us. These include smart city technology, which you hear a lot about, but what is it really? When we have autonomous driving at scale, every intersection, every traffic light, every crosswalk is going to have an IoT device connected to the cloud to then connect to the automotive vehicles that are driving around, and to a central control network, which will route those cars based on traffic, emergency, and other factors. So there's going to be terabytes of data a day as we learn and work with the auto industry going to and from each car. Now, that's a massive amount of information. Just to give you some perspective, you use about 5 gigabits a month, a month on your phone. So there'll be 20 to 30 to 100 times more information than you use in a month going through these cars in a day. The other interesting thing about the automotive world is that you won't have anything to do while the car is driving you around, and therefore the inside the car is going to become essentially a mini IMAX theater, and you can be in a business meeting in real time. You can play a virtual reality game with all of your friends around the world, or you can watch an HD movie as the car drives you around. So again, a lot of data is going to be moving between vehicles and people. There's hundreds of other options that are being worked on around the country and around the world. Things like smart building management, which is very important for many of you in this group, where you can actually understand the use of your building in real time, where people are, where they're going, what the temperatures need to be, those kinds of things, and monitor and control your building systems using artificial intelligence for efficiency. Another really important aspect that's a little bit undercovered right now in the press is the automation of factories. When you can have factories, especially robotic devices that can be easily moved around a factory floor or even outside because they are connected with a 5G connection and you don't need cables to connect them to your manufacturing core system, you can actually drive a lot more efficiency in manufacturing too. Things like warehouse management, again, will have a whole nother dimension of flexibility once these networks are in place. So similar to how 10 years ago we couldn't imagine doing a fraction of the things we do today on our phones, you can now look ahead 10 years, because that's when 5G will be really deployed at scale in the United States, and imagine some of the things that will be out there that you can't even think about today as well. Back in 2009, Uber and Lyft weren't reality, they were just ideas, and it took 4G technology to actually get them to scale. So you can have millions of transactions going on per hour. In fact, not even in just the United States, but all over the world. So what will be next? For us, in the real estate industry, 5G has the potential to offer significant benefits to a number of classes of assets. These include, in our view, shopping centers, office buildings, mixed-use residential, and sporting venues, among many, many others. This is not necessarily so much as a risk, but also an opportunity for all of our sectors. The possible uses are vast. I talked about building automation and controls already. I've also alluded to tools like measuring foot traffic, how your parking asset is being utilized, analytics that you can use in this kind of a venue to understand where your consumers are in the building, how they're moving around, how much time they spend at each of your tenants' locations, and then build in data analytics and targeted advertising to enrich not only your property, but your tenants' experience. The ability to also deploy secure private networks with tremendous speeds and capacity can offer another layer of functionality for tenants and act as a source of differentiation for your property versus other options they might have. And I'll get to some examples of that in a minute and some case studies. So in short, 5G has the potential to enhance the attractiveness and the value proposition of your real estate across almost every asset type. So with that, let me get into a few of the case studies. The first one is a deployment we have in Las Vegas at a premier shopping center, which you might be able to recognize from the picture. Heavy foot traffic at that shopping center, especially during big weekends, prize fights, etc. We're straining the wireless network that was serving that center and prevented significant real-time customer analytics at all from being gathered and those insights being utilized. The customer experience inside the venue, especially when it was crowded, was poor, both on the wireless and the Wi-Fi side. So we came in with our team and engineered and installed a purposefully designed Wi-Fi system that we call carrier-grade Wi-Fi as part of our end-to-end solution, so people's Wi-Fi would work and never be blocked in the venue. That enabled multimedia enhancement of the customer experience based on the venue owner's needs, and that real-time foot traffic analytics and ubiquitous connectivity in that venue for the first time. The other benefits that can come from this kind of a really pervasive, high-capacity interior wireless network are security services, streaming digital signage that you can change based on the flow of customers through your venue or time of day, et cetera, and other functionality that will continue to be enhanced as some of the other industries around us understand the advances in 5G in the coming years and start to use it. Another case study that we think is interesting is the ISM Raceway in Phoenix. We have installations like this in a number of the ISM raceways. I'm not sure how many of you are NASCAR fans, but I can assure you that there'll be 50 to 100,000 people for an entire weekend watching these cars go around the track. Very into it, very exciting for the fan base of NASCAR, and they want and need connectivity solutions. These places go from completely unoccupied to 100,000 people for a weekend. The issue is the customer experience becomes really important for the owners of those venues to maximize the per customer revenue per race on site. And that affects not only the installation owner, it affects their sponsors, it affects their vendors, et cetera. So to make these tracks more attractive to all of those constituencies, ISM's been working with us, and we put on a system that can handle the tremendous amount of data usage that comes out on race days, that the existing infrastructure was simply inefficient to manage effectively. So to solve this, what we did was installed carrier-grade Wi-Fi on site. That enabled the enhanced customer experience of connectivity, analytics, and monitoring. Also, the system's got the ability to help optimize logistics, both for pickup and drop-off, for Uber and other services, and also for the transport and deployment of vendor and concession products around the track as they're being used. The venue offers today a much richer, more immersive experience for race fans, which includes the ability to get a VR headset on site, tie it into your favorite driver's car, and drive around the track with your favorite driver and see what he sees. This kind of technology will come to basketball arenas and other sports venues where a more enriched, customized experience for each person will be available, but you have to have the network to deliver it if you're going to offer it as a venue operator or a team owner. Our next case study on slide 13 here, we're also seeing office building owners looking to improve the connectivity in their sites by installing these sort of 5G-ready solutions. And one thing I wanted to mention here is Wi-Fi can work under today's technology if you've got enough capacity and you have an engineered system in almost any building. Many of your Wi-Fi experiences day-to-day are really weak and poor because they are just sort of plugged in a non-engineered fashion, let me call it, and you're going to have a lot of variability in quality. But the other important thing about handling not only today's traffic, but tomorrow's is really important. So forward compatibility of systems in your buildings is going to be crucial because, as you heard from Sam and many others you'll find out from today, this technology is not stopping, it's moving forward. So there's a couple of steps that we're going to be taking till we get to true 5G. One of them is we want to enhance Wi-Fi today so we can handle the 4G traffic in an engineered fashion. The second is we want to be able to have forward compatibility to something called CBRS, which is a set of spectrum, wireless spectrum, that some of you may remember the day of the CB radio in your car. That's the CB and CBRS, Citizen Band Radio Spectrum. And the U.S. government is going to reposition and is in the process of repositioning that spectrum, not so you can avoid the cops on the highway, but to something a little more important, which is to add more capability to wireless networks, especially private wireless networks. And how they're going to do that is they're going to auction the spectrum in a way that you don't have to be AT&T or Verizon, T-Mobile or Sprint to be able to afford to buy the rights to the spectrum. It'll be auctioned in a priority fashion, and there'll always be general access to that spectrum for anybody in the United States. That's going to help entrepreneurs, that's going to help building owners, that's going to help shopping center tenants figure out how they can best use mobile spectrum to help their business. It's going to be the first time it's ever been done. So you want to be forward compatible to CBRS spectrum, which is in, if you're interested, the 3.5 gigahertz range. Beyond that, 5G will be the new mobile technology that comes in even beyond that, using traditional spectrum plus the 3.5 gigahertz plus 4 and 5 gigahertz spectrum that today is being used by satellites that don't need all of it. So there'll be more repositioning of spectrum in those bands as well. So you want forward compatibility in your building because you don't want to do this 3 times in the next 10 years. And that's how we're designing these indoor networks now. In this particular site, the building's connectivity was challenged by low E-glass, so signals were having a tougher time getting inside. No common area Wi-Fi was on the site. There were some private tenant systems, but there was a lot of frustration with the visitors and even the tenants because it was limited capability and private. So we addressed these issues by installing a system with carrier-grade Wi-Fi, guest Wi-Fi service that didn't need a login, fully managed and monitor building analytics, which helped reduce the operating costs of the building, and enhanced network security that kind of came with this. The installation also supports smart parking functionality for both tenants and visitors, streaming digital signage for the building and notifications, et cetera. And a very interesting aspect was advanced building security through facial recognition technology. So people didn't necessarily need cards that they might lose, or when they left the firm, you'd have to get them back. It's all on facial recognition. So all this makes the building significantly more attractive to tenants and serves as a source of differentiation versus the local alternatives that they might have for their office space. So in closing, let me quickly recap a few points. First one is 5G has the potential to be an innovative and transformative technology for many aspects of our lives and many of our properties, and really for the better in the most part. The way we consume entertainment, the way we travel, the way we conduct business, and a host of other things can actually get better and more efficient as a result of 5G. Second, the 5G technology deployment will take a number of years to develop, and we're just starting on this path today. Now, we expect 5G deployments to last for the better part of a decade or more, as I said. So if you're not fully up to speed on what this technology might mean for your business or for your property, there's some time to adjust. And third, at American Tower, we're well positioned to significantly contribute to understanding of this in the REIT industry, so we'd welcome your questions, and starting with today, we'd be happy to field those to help you get a better read on how this is going to affect your particular business. I want to thank you and also offer, if we've got a couple more minutes, for any questions from the audience before I conclude. Thank you.